When I look at our history, I realize that our history is not negotiable. It's not defined by slavery. It is a profound history, and we need to teach it in honesty. Good evening, everybody. Hello. Sorry about that. I've been a little late to getting on here tonight, but I want to thank you for joining us for the Erudition Network's Black History and Knowledge session. I am back. I was not here last week, and I do greatly apologize. I have had some intermittent ability to be back over the last few weeks. Some of that has to do with things that are going on and I'm trying to take care of, but I am here tonight. I want to thank everyone. I have noticed a sizable increase in the amount of people who are sharing and contributing to the network, and I want to encourage you to continue to do so. It is greatly appreciated. We are reaching more people, and right now that is greatly important as we continue to do these programs, because we want people to be able to learn history someplace. Right now, it is so important that we do that, because it's being challenged everywhere. And so I asked that you all make sure that you do what you have to do. Get on here, even if you watch the replay, or so be it. That's fine, but allow us to come into your home and to be able to share factual information with you. I will also say this. I have noticed over the last few weeks that I have not been able to get comments. So I would tell you this, and it's predominantly coming from the Facebook side. If you would like to comment on the program, I ask that you please do so by going to YouTube. That's probably the best place to go, and you will be able, I will be able to see your comments and be able to respond to you in kind. I believe there are some Facebook pages that we do connect to, but I do believe that there are some things that are going on with StreamYard, with our servicer, that makes it a little bit harder for you all to be able to, for me to be able to see your comments. So I want to be able to see them go, oh, we're streaming through multiple platforms. You can go through YouTube, Twitch. Is another one that we're on that you can possibly hit. Any of our Facebook pages are supposed to go through, but as I said, we've been having issues with that. So please, I want to see your comments. I want to know that you're here watching with us. Please do so. Also, share the program. It's nothing but a click for you. Share it on your social media platforms so that people can start to get this information and be able to share it with others as we grow further in this network. I was given a couple of moments because I wanted people to be able to come on. So we'll give it about another minute or two. But I wanted to say, I hope everyone had a great New Year. My throat's a little croaky, so I hope you all had a great New Year. I hope your family and you had a great holiday season as we came into this. And I hope that over the last few weeks, despite everything that has been going on in the country, everything is going well with you and yours, and that everything is normalized in your life as best that it can possibly be. So what are we going to talk about tonight? An interesting thing. I was already going to talk about this, but I saw that my wife and children were talking about this a little bit earlier today before I was laying down, and I heard a little bit of it. Uh, but I want to talk about some of these uh, issues in our new administration, and I want to talk about it from a historical base. I don't want to talk about it from me or anybody who just comes on and saying that they don't like the current president or they don't like. I want to hit this from a Black history perspective that will inform us and allow people on either side of the aisle to go and do actual practical research. What I'm talking about is birthright. Birthright. Now, we know that birthright, as African Americans or the children of those who were enslaved in this country, that birthright is a sensitive topic. But what a lot of us don't know is that the idea of African American birthright in this country led the base work, right, and shaped what we know as American citizenship. And a lot of us aren't really aware of that. We don't really know, right? The first naturalization laws in the United States were passed in the 1790s, right? And it was restricted to free white people. And it also said that it was free white people of good character. This law was put into place to underscore that there was a racial separation on what citizenship was, and that the only people who would be known as citizens were predominantly white men. Now, we see what is going on today, and we see that we're trying now to go back and exclude people from the naturalized citizenship rank. We want to change these laws that have been applied. This is nothing new. This is nothing new. And unfortunately, it is something that we continue to deal with. Birthright citizenship is something that is guaranteed to us by the 14th Amendment of the Constitution of the United States for African Americans and for anyone. But it was pushed because the 14th Amendment was pushed for the idea of African American enslaved. So that set the precedent that it gave citizenship to all persons born or by legal terms naturalized in the U.S. And it also goes so far as to say you are then given equal protection and due process under law as a citizen. So it carries with it a lot of protections. Now, we can say that these protections, right, have been challenged throughout decades since the ratifying of the 14th Amendment. But per the Constitution, per the law of America, that is what it is. And it has been that way since 1868. And it was brought about because of the freeing of slaves. So when we look at that and we see it being attacked, and we say to ourselves, well, it doesn't really concern me, right? If you Oh, I see this. What is this? There was an attack where blocking access to YouTube. I was able to around it, but we have new ways to attack predatory behavior on others because here we are. Yes, people don't want information put out. Thank you. I want you to be able to share these programs, and I want you to be able to learn from it. So if there is something that you see that prevents you from sharing, loading, or whatever, let us know, and we will get on it, and we will try to fix that. So getting back to what we're talking about, citizenship. It's always been a precarious thing for African Americans. We note from the famous Dred Scott case in 1856, where it was ruled that descendants or people of African American slaves were not U.S. citizens, and that white people were not giving any reason to respect or give them the reason that they were that their opinions even mattered. Now, when we see people of the migrants of Latin origin being pushed out of this country, being routed up, this should greatly remind many of us, who, especially historians, of a very famous part of African American history, where we went through a similar thing when Blacks were being freed in the North, and people were allowed to come up to the North and grab them and take them back down to slavery, despite the fact that they were freemen and may have been free since the inception of the United States, given freedom by heritage because their families fought in a Revolutionary War, or just because they earned their freedom in some way, shape, or form. But we know that this was an issue that went on in our country over and over and over and over again. And now we're revisiting this again. We're coming up to it again. We're making people fugitives. We're going and grabbing them when we can. This is the plan. And then it goes right back until 1850 when we looked at the Fugitive Slave Act. How people were yanked and federal enforcement was put, and they were required to assist in the capture of fugitive slaves, even if these people may have actually been legally free. How citizens went along with it. And because they weren't already considered citizens, that's the key, they didn't have access to what we discussed a moment ago of due process under the law. They had no right to the finances that they may have acquired. They had no right to anything that they had when they were grabbed, even their own children. So when we look at where we are right now, in comparison, it amazes me that many of us haven't drawn those lines, that we haven't put it all together to see yet. Because it's important. It's important. Letting someone know I can't see their comments, but I just happened to notice it was popping up on the side from my Facebook here. But one of the things that I guess we really, really need to accept is that unless we know this history, we're going to be doomed to repeat this history. We have passed act after act after act for civil rights. In 1866, we passed the Civil Rights Act that affirmed citizenship for all the people that were born in the U.S. It's one of the first times in which we really pushed that everyone who was born here could be a citizen. This is before the passing of the 14th Amendment in 1868. The only people that were excluded from it were Native Americans. But Blacks were allowed and were seen to be citizens. And today, we don't know this. We don't know this history. And we allow ourselves to be fooled into these beliefs that citizenship is something that is can be changed and willy-nilly just written off with an executive order. The 14th Amendment has very clear language on purpose. On purpose. But it has been a push by certain people through different decades to change back who is considered a citizen within the United States of America. And a lot of times, those who are pushing it have a racist background, a xenophobic mentality that they want to exclude people. A candidate that we just had for president, it was challenged that her parents were not either, that they weren't Black and that they weren't American. Thus, maybe she shouldn't be considered to be American. Barack Obama, the first Black president of the United States, the whole birther conspiracy was about, well, was he really born here? Is he naturalized? And so we run into these ideas, but all of them have a base in Black history. They have a base in Black history. Because rather we're talking about Dred Scott, whether we're talking about the 14th Amendment, if these things came about because of the country's desire to maintain African Americans, the children of the enslaved here. Goodwill, and all of those things play a part in it. Tony, good to see you. Good. Thank you for joining us. But let's understand that the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments of the Constitution were about the abolition of slavery, about making people citizens in this country, and then maintaining that their children who had by chattel law been subject to the master were now considered to be citizens upon birth in this country. All of this was done under the purposes of African Americans. We are greatly invested in what the idea of naturalization means. Because before that, it meant a white man in good standing, of good character. While we're fighting DEI, while we're fighting all of these ideas of Black history and historic education, why are we doing this? We're doing it because the more we push things away, the more you don't go to research and study, and you don't think about where these things actually come from. why they came to be. We put into our laws framework to keep people protected under due process of law. Today, we have people trying to sign it away with a pen. And many of us don't see our connection to it. The 14th Amendment is said to be a highly controversial topic and is frequently referred to. It is always referred to because, again, the birthright citizenship, right, that is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment is not something that they initially wanted. I would challenge you to go back to the foundations, the Naturalization Act of 1790. Go look at that. Free white persons, good character, property owners, slave owners. We have to understand why these things are important, right? Because if we don't, we're going to fall into this trap of ignoring what is going on and telling ourselves, and I hear so many say, we don't know. We don't know. We don't care. Doesn't have anything to do with me. But remember how we came into this situation. The 3/5 compromise that many of us think we understand. The 3/5 compromise that the original Constitution crafted and allowed to say who we were and what we were. It determined that 3/5 of our ancestors will be counted for the purposes of taxation and representation. They would be counted for electoral college votes, for the amount of senators and people that you would have for your state. And what it granted was an unequal amount of power to slaveholders, to masters. And it allowed for us to go another 80 years in slavery and in violence in this country upon African American people. Now, when we look at that 3/5 rule and we see how it set the precedent for racial exclusion and what could be considered and what could not be considered, and we don't understand our connection to it, I named this episode How Black History Shaped American Citizenship. I have told you all on many occasions, I asked you to read W.B. Du Bois's book, Gift of Black Folks. This is another gift that Black people gave to the world. And if you don't consider it to be a gift, let me tell you this. Because of the 14th Amendment, because of the amendments that were passed, not just the 14th, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, white women, not Black women, not Latino women, not Asian women, white women were given rights that they did not have before. So when we talk about the Karens out in the street telling you you don't belong here, go back to your country. Had you not been in this country, she wouldn't have any rights. I would ask her to go read the writings of Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and I'd ask her to go out there and Alice Paul if she wants to, and understand what it meant to own nothing. That all ownership went through a man of good character. These are gifts that were given under the suffering of blacks, of our ancestors. And if we sit on these things that they earned, that they died for, they worked for, we're wrong. This country was established under the idea and the auspices of having blacks as property and excluding them from citizenship, but allowing them to be represented as a person in a way to be able to allow power. And if you can't align that with where we are right now, with what we're seeing right now, then you're going to allow yourself to fall into further problems. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're commenting, I'm not seeing your comments. I don't know what's going on with Facebook. Please go to YouTube, and I guarantee you I will see your comments. But as I always say, I don't ever want this to be just me talking to you. I try to open this up so that this can be a conversation and interactive with you. I think the true issue with the rights pertaining to the liberties it ensures African-American citizens, because some Americans want to continue to oppress them regardless of liberties and law guarantee. Well, here's the thing. If you sit down and you watch and allow others to be oppressed and minimized and denigrated, then I think you're wrong on its face, because these are rights. These are things that were earned under black bodies. And that's why I'm making the point tonight. While I'm telling you tonight that these radical racial ideologies that we're seeing right now are not new. But they're not new. And we have to do better. We have to do better. You know, reparations would have prevented this from being. I don't believe that reparations would have. Let me tell you why. I believe that post the Civil War, in the Reconstruction era, that the country was trying to do better. Everybody was eager to do better. They were trying to make amends for the slavery that they had, until many started coming back from the war and realizing what they lost, and then seeing former slaves build up towns and build up things and take the skills. That's what many of them said, that they robbed from my daddy, forgetting the fact that these were third, fourth generation slaves, right? Or freemen whose parents had been slaves, beaten, killed, and watched family molested and assaulted. If anything, the reparations would have just made people, and I see, Tony, you're saying the same thing. The reparations would have exacerbated the attacks, because they were angry that you can produce produce out of the ground that they could not. People were angry that they didn't have the worker to be out there. And while we're on that subject, let's talk about that. Let's talk about tariffs. tariffs. Let's talk about income tax. Let's talk about how all of that affects what we're talking about here. Before, in the United States, America had free labor. The slave was free labor. Oh, you paid insurance for him like you would pay for your horse, but you could work him until the day he or she died. You could work whatever came out of them, their children, to the day that they died. And so America was able to make money off of free labor, the building blocks of this country. And it wasn't until 1909, as we had come out of Reconstruction, as we had come out of the era of protection of blacks in the South, with the compromise of Rutherford B. Hayes, right? When we did the compromise for Rutherford B. Hayes, right, then we came into a point where we were able to then start to see how angry they really were starting to get. In 1877, when all of this really started to turn around, we started to run into problems of lynching and murders, of things going throughout the country, that the rise of a new Klan, of a new anger towards blacks, because they had, and black codes and the beginning of Jim Crow, because the troops withdrew out of these states and martial law was no longer there. But blacks had by then started to build their own towns, their own businesses, their own places of worship, their own communities. And so as we went into 1905, things started to turn. The country had done some things that were jacked up that caused this turning. And we could talk about this tonight, because I do believe that many of us don't know it. Ooh, I think I froze there for a moment. Many of us don't know it. What is this? The Southern country. It's the same thing. It's the same. Knowing DEI is taking white jobs, replacing white people. Foolishness. Yes, it is very much foolishness. The people who benefit the most from DEI, ladies and gentlemen, and you can go back and you can go look this up. The people who benefit the most are white women. By some estimation, 78% of DEI programs, DEI supposed businesses, diversity, equity, and inclusion businesses, were white women. They are the ones who have benefited from it the most. Yet they are not the most educated. The most educated are black women, by a far margin of any other demographic. But when black women tried to open up businesses to allow people to establish businesses, to be venture capitalists, right? They said it was racist. They said it was wrong. But they weren't just hiring black women. They were empowering women of all demographics. That was the problem. We fall for the okie doke because the okie doke seems comfortable to us. We fall for this idea of tariffs, but we forget that tariffs have never historically worked. Coming out of Reconstruction, coming after the Rutherford B. Hayes Compromise, the McKinley Tariff Act of 1890, right, was named after Republican Congressman William McKinley. You know, William McKinley that became president was shot. And thus Theodore Roosevelt became president. But it raised the average tariff rate higher. I think at that point it was like 25%. It raised it almost to 50%. And why was that? Because there was no more free labor. The country was suffering. Farmers were having problems being able, white farmers, the ones who they counted, were not being able. I hope you all can hear me. We seem to be revving. But farmers, they were the ones who were having issues, the ones who they were counting, the ones who they were looking at. And so what ended up happening was we ran into these problems where they decided we need to create tariffs, right? To reduce the government debt and to have us to increase our surplus. This sounds much like what we're talking about right now. Goods were too expensive. Things were too expensive. And so people said, hey, I agree with McKinley. Let's go in here and let's put these tariffs on. And it worked in the beginning of the country, in the early days of the Republic. But that was a different time because we had slaves then. We had free labor then. We had workers who could work field upon field upon field. Our commerce was higher. But what ended up happening is that because of the tariffs, American businesses did exactly what we're predicting is going to happen now. They raise businessmen, bankers who do business worldwide. They force businesses to raise the price of domestic goods. And when the farmers face higher costs and for their supplies, for their machinery, for the people they had to pay because it was no longer slavery, there was a crash. There was a crash. And this is known. This is a historical fact. I hear you, Tony. The tariff increased costs of all Americans in terms of purchasing power and wages. Many items that came from abroad became pricier than products. This is a fact. But due to this, we started to get what is now, well, it's historically called the Populist Party, right? Or what you now say flows into the Liberal Party. But they opposed these high tariffs. They thought, wait a minute, we shouldn't be doing this. It's going to constrain us. And we should know from the McKinley Tariff Act, we should have learned, but we have not. There is a way to use tariffs properly. We have tariffs. But what we're doing right now is grifting. We're grifting. We are trying to be persuasive. We are trying to manipulate and deceive. Right? And this is what, yeah, I saw that. I saw that. Because history has a long memory. But it is also able to be manipulated. We're falling under this idea of confidence men, and maybe even the president himself is, who tell you something that isn't really true. So what is the issue? Again, I'm telling you tonight how it applies to African American, to Black history. I'm teaching you, and I encourage you to challenge it, to go and look it up and say, Eddie, you're not being truthful right now. No, that's not what happened, but it is. We had to do tariffs, or they thought, because we didn't have that labor, that free labor, born generationally over and over again, that could work our fields, that can teach the next generation to be the blacksmiths, the planters, the sharecroppers, the mechanics, whatever you want, whatever you choose, shine. People that fix our clothes. I think we have to be better. Reagan once said, government isn't the solution to our problems, government is a problem. I actually agree with that statement. Government can be your problem because it can go in and decide who and where and how you live. Reagan wasn't absolutely wrong with that. Look at the Weimar Republic when the Nazis came to power. Hitler changed the entire government. He made people make sure they ate, made sure that they seemed they was happy, made it seem that it was prosperous. But in the end of the day, everything was owned by the government, ran by the government. Your life was dictated by the government. So I agree with that. I do agree with that, Dustin. Got it. No problem, Tony. Thank you for joining us, brother. Here's the thing. Coming out of those tariffs, though, we went into what we've done the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. Now, what is the 16th Amendment of the United States? What did it do? It's an important amendment that comes after these significant amendments to establish life for people who were former slaves. The 16th Amendment ratified the idea of an income tax because we failed in our tariffs. We didn't have the free labor anymore. So when we ratified the 16th Amendment, it was brought into Congress in 1909 and ratified by 1913. We started to tax people. An income tax had not happened before. Had not happened before. We had things where we taxed certain goods during the Civil War. But until 1913, tax had been basically considered to be unconstitutional. But it was needed because the country was going bankrupt. And it was ratified. Congress instituted the income tax, and so it's such as history. But there's a peculiar thing that happened after the ratification of the 16th Amendment. Racial violence. Black towns being burned down. Lynching. Murder. And if you don't see the connection, let me make it even more crystal clear to you. By 1918, as we were involved in World War I, the tax in the country increased to almost 80%. And people went crazy. Those who didn't have already, families gone to war, people went crazy. When for the last couple of weeks before I wasn't here briefly, we had talked about Red Summer, and I was telling my sons today, there's a direct correlation between the public being unhappy that when blacks came back from World War I and people being increased in their taxes and the amount of money that they were able to have in their homes, violence increased. Murders, rapes, whole towns burned down. Until in 1919, when Red Summer, we saw violence streak all over the country. Violence was acceptable. Things had gotten bad. Not only had they taken away, are they taxing, but they taken away your alcohol. The country was full of scofflaw, people creating steals. It was a mess to be able to survive. And as we look at these connections, as we look at all of these things, and I ask you all this, because I want you to consider these things. I want you to tell people. I want you to learn so that you can challenge and say, yeah, okay, well, is there a better way? I'm not going to tell you that this person or this person is just horrible or evil. People are a lot of times just not informed. And they follow what they think they know. They go along with what they think they know. And that has been a problem in this country since its inception. Since its inception. We covered a lot over the last 47 minutes. I'm appreciative of you all joining me here tonight. I'm going to open it right now for the last couple of minutes to your questions, though, because I'm finding that I spend a lot of time talking and giving you guys information, but I always want to hear from you and, learn just as equally from you, things that you may have to add to the conversation. So anything right now that you want to add, please add it now. Any questions, any thoughts, anything that you want to bring up? Anybody got anything? I do this every show, and I have people say, "Well, Eddie, you shouldn't, it feels like empty air." But I really want you guys to be able to interact and talk and give us any of your thoughts on what's going on. If you don't, that's fine too. You're fine too. I see somebody again. If you're not on YouTube, I'm probably not seeing. I see somebody posted a question here. Yes, you can always go look up anything that I discussed tonight via go look at the Constitution of the United States. You can always go pull up the 3/5 rule, the 3/5 compromise. You can look at why do people think tariffs? I think you got cut off there, Sean Anthony. But there is a great book. I just pulled it up here, The Framers' Coup, The Making of the United States Constitution. It's written by Michael Claremont. It's a good book. You could read that. I believe a part of the reason people think tariffs are foolproof is because they believe our countries have no choice. However, no, it hasn't. I think a lot of times that people are not really asking questions about tariffs is because they don't really understand it. It probably wasn't taught well in school. unless you're a historian, a legislator, or a person who is interested in that sort of thing, it's probably something that you won't just quickly pull up either. So it's easy to get around that and say something that when people go Google, they say, oh, okay, I see what he's saying, but not get the full understanding as to why it's not a good idea. And it really does take a little bit of study, a little bit of research, a little bit of understanding. But the question I'm asking is, why do Americans think that instead of increasing the cost of necessities, it will instead decrease the cost of charging? Well, because on its face, that's what tariffs were supposed to do. But what we have found, remember I said in the early days of the Republic, of the American Republic, we had tariffs, right? There were tariffs. But what has happened as we, especially now, we are a global economy. Those old 1700 mentalities don't work the way that they used to. But the law, it's in our system, and we are allowed to do it. We use tariffs and sanctions and things to harm countries, right? To increase their goods, the price of their goods, to bankrupt and make it a struggle for their economies. We do these things to Russia and things like that. So we know that tariffs have a negative connection to the economy. But if you don't do the research, and this is why some people were even telling President Trump that this was a bad idea. Economists in his own administration trying to talk him out of it. But it's also again, I tell you, it comes out to a grift. If I raise it and people have to buy it, companies have a quick cash grab before everything inflates and people go broke, but they make money. They make money. And so you have to look at where the source is coming from. Who's encouraging this? Who wants this to happen? And this is what I meant by the grift, right? There's a grifting going on in this country right now. And so that there is a part of that. The old historical English for it, they used to call it pettifoggery. Right? That's what they're doing. Causing a panic. Telling you this must be done. Telling the president that this must be done. And then people who have reason, right? They push that. People made money in the beginning. They always do. There's always someone who's going to make some money. But the overall effect is catastrophic. It's catastrophic. That's a good question, Sean Anthony. Thank you for joining us tonight and asking that question. We got about 5 more minutes. A little bit more than 5 more minutes. Anything else? Anything else? Any questions that you got? I'm here for you for the next couple of minutes. I haven't been here. I wasn't here last week. God willing, I will be here next week. Be on to do another lesson, to talk to you all and to grow our knowledge. But until I do want you to share this program. Please share. Share. Also, if you have purchased my last book, I need you to go in and leave a review. Leave a review, an honest review on Amazon. Go in and leave a review so that people can see and use it to better gauge what it is with the book. I want that book to start to generate more traction as we go into next month, Black History Month. And I want honest opinion and thoughts on what you got from the book. And as I told you, even in the book, bring those questions. If you read something in it that is curious to you, bring those questions to the interactive and we will talk about it. But please, 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 if you have purchased a book, go to Amazon, pull it up. Let's see if I can pull it up right here, and please leave a review. Please leave a review of the book. I appreciate those who already have. If you already have done that and it's just waiting to submit, I appreciate you doing that. It is something that I'm really trying to get people to do because reviews and thoughts push the sale and the algorithm for the book. So I want you to do that. It is very important that we get that done. I was trying to bring it up because I want you guys to be able to see the page. The internet's a little crazy, I see, tonight. It's been a little laggy. I guess I'll see how badly it lagged. I only view it as the most inexpensive, well-rounded, and encyclopedia I've ever. Yeah, it is a lot of information, and I want people to get that information. But it is important that we start to leave reviews and to share this. Please leave a review. All right, I'm going to share this page with you all because I want you to be able to see where to go. Everybody is not as savvy, so it will computer savvy, I should say. But here it is. Go on to Amazon. You can leave it in either format. Either one. Rather you buy the $45 paperback or you do the $18 interactive for your tablet, phone, or whatever. You can do that, but please leave a review. Let us know how you feel about the book and help us to grow that audience, and get more people to see. Please do that. All righty. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had you learned some things tonight. Having an hour is always but I tried to give you a lot of information within this last hour, where you could go, what you can do. If you are looking for something to read, to fact check anything that I said, please feel free to message us. Go to Erudition, either on Facebook, leave it here in the comments, and I guarantee you we will respond to you. Sorry about that. And you will be able to get the information that you need and to fact check everything that was said tonight, because we deal in facts here, not supposition and sophistry and letting you just saying anything to anger or to separate people. This is a fact-based program, and I want it to stay that way. So please feel free to challenge and ask questions. If there are no more other questions, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you all have a blessed rest of your week. Have a good weekend. For those of you who are dealing with the extreme cold, stay warm, stay safe. God bless you. God keep you and your family. And hopefully we will be able to see you next week. God keep you all. Thank you.